Recently, the Osun state government announced that music superstar Davido will chair its Sports Trust Fund, an initiative meant to revamp the state's sporting sector. Now, on the surface, that sounds fine. Davido is popular, influential, and yes, from Osun State. But it raises a question many Nigerians quietly ask over their morning pap. When did fame become a qualification for governance? You see, this is the Nigerian pattern. We don't look for who is most capable, we look for who is most connected. Now, it's not what can you do, but who do you know? It's always been like that. And that is how we turn leadership into a family business. Take it national now. President Tinubu's administration has actually faced growing criticism for favoring close allies and family figures in key appointments. For example, his son, Sheyi Tinubu, has become an influential name in government and business circles, often seen at high-level meetings and state events, even though he holds no elected or formal government office. Too many, that's not just optics. It's a symbol of how access in Nigeria is inherited and not earned. Now, let's be clear. Davido, may genuinely want to give back, and Sheyi Tinubu may mean well as well. But the issue here is not intent. It is structure. Because when public trust begins to depend on private relationships, merit quietly packs its bags and leaves through the back door. Think about the message it sends to the young graduate in Osogbo or that sports administrator who spent a decade trying to reform youth programs. What do they learn? That no matter how hard they work, the system rewards the familiar and not the qualified. And that is the real danger of nepotism. It normalizes exclusion. It tells every ordinary Nigerian that you can be talented, you can be hardworking and patriotic, but unless your surname opens doors, your dreams may not cross the corridor. It's almost poetic if you ask me, in a tragic way though. Now, we call ourselves the giants of Africa, yet our biggest export is opportunity for the privileged. So this morning, as you get ready for the new week, just remember our real problem is not that we lack bright minds. It's that we refuse to give them a seat at the table. Nepotism may look harmless, a governor appointing a famous son of the soil, a president leaning on his son and all that. But every time it happens, a more qualified Nigerian loses a chance to serve. And a country that keeps sidelining its best hands will always struggle to rise, no matter how many big names sit in the boardroom. And maybe it's time for Nigeria. It is time that we stop running Nigeria like a family WhatsApp group. Good morning and welcome to a Sunday edition of Breakfast Extra. Now, the show that gets you talking about events that happened during the course of the week. I'm Osun in the company of Chiwete Onyema. Hi, Chiwete. Good morning.
Morning, Darshan. That's quite a powerful monologue there.
Yeah, it is, definitely. Sadly, it's the way so many Nigerians think, and it has become a norm in some form.
I think at this point in time, we heard this a lot of time where they say that it's not qualification that opens the door for you. It's who you know. And yes, we try to talk about the fact that relationships are good, right? But most times we come from a point of view that relationships would always surpass quality and delivery. And I think that's something we need to start talking about in Nigeria.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you find out that so many, rich people do not want to be associated with, the middle or even poor class, except they have something to offer. And the poor ones are always aiming high as well. So, nepotism has actually been working for Nigeria and in Nigeria, for a very, very long time. And it's time, it stops and merit is given to whom is due.
I agree with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, the show continues proper. Stay with us.
Good morning and welcome to a Sun edition of Breakfast Extra. I am Chiwete, of course, Onyema with Darshan, and together we will be guiding you through some of the biggest stories shaping Nigeria and the continent this week, from activism and accountability to politics, power, and legacy. Coming up first, we take a powerful look back at one of Nigeria's most defining youth movements, talking about #EndSARS. Now, 5 years after, has justice been served for victims of police brutality, or have their cries been lost in silence? Then, of course, all eyes are on the Federal Capital Territory as Minister Nyesom Wike defends his record and tackles criticism over service delivery and leadership style. Now, from infrastructure to media freedom, accountability remains on the front burner. In our extra special, a mix of sports and showbiz headlines, of course, Davido has been appointed chairman of the Osun Sports Trust Fund. Strategic move or political favor? A lot of people asking us the question. We'll speak with a sports analyst and get an entertainment take on whether celebrity influence can really reform sports administration. Now, across the continent, the spotlight turns to Tanzania, where the ruling party faces its toughest test yet in the 2025 presidential election. Now, with President Samia Suluhu Hassan seeking re-election and opposition voices regaining momentum. And then finally, in our Weekend Warrior feature, we celebrate the life and legacy of Ghana's former First Lady, Nana Konadu Agyan-Rawlings. A fearless advocate for women's rights, she redefined what it meant to be First Lady in Africa, from the corridors of power to front lines of activism. All that and more ahead. It's a full Sunday lineup of stories that matter, voices that inspire, and conversations that challenge.
It looks like, we have a lot of, I did say it yesterday, while we were wrapping up, that this morning there's going to be so many things to talk about, a lot
Absolutely.
of hot topics, from the EndSARS to what is happening in Tanzania, by the way. So many people are talking about it. And you hear people say what a man can do, a woman can do better, because we've seen similarities of happenings in Ivory Coast, in so many places, so many African countries. You have the presidents wanting to, run for fifth consecutive terms, fourth consecutive terms, most of them, stifling dissent, most of them arresting their opposition, and a lot is happening in Africa, honestly.
It's really interesting times in Africa, and what I'm bothered about is the fact that what are we doing? And I'm saying, what are we doing in terms of, now we castigated the likes of Mali, Burkina Faso, due to the fact that in Niger, because of the military coup that they've experienced in there. But when we look at other countries in Africa practicing democracy, you see, you sit back, when you look at it, you're asking yourself, is this really democracy? Because there's something happening to the opposition.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in Ivory Coast right now, the two major, opponents, I'm talking about Gbagbo and Thiam, they both are not, for some reason, they can't run.
Yeah, they can't run. They were disqualified.
Exactly. We saw the same thing even in Cameroon. Yeah,
but the wife, actually, that's the ex-wife, that's the former first lady, that's Gbagbo, came out to contest as well. But of course, we know how that happens. Look at what happened in Cameroon. Right, they said the opposition was leaning to victory, and we had to wait for almost 1 week before we're hearing allegedly that what's his name, Biya would be declared winner of the presidential elections, and what is actually happening, honestly? And not to talk of the numerous number of protests happening around, because we will be discussing EndSARS, right? Protests happening around Africa, Madagascar, we've talked about it. Like in the past 3 weeks, in fact, in the past 1 month, it is all we can talk about. One protest after the other in Africa. And
bringing it back to Nigeria, right? I mean, we talked about it, the fact that we don't know what's happening, defections left, right, and center, but it looks like defection is one way. Everybody moving to the ruling party now. Yeah. So you just ask yourself, what is really happening to Africa's democracy at the end of the day? Those practicing democracy, are you really doing that? And we also have those who are experiencing full military regime. So it's really, at times, we ask what's really happening to governments in Africa.
It's very interesting times, by the way. So I think with that, we will have to take a quick break, and we will be back to continue with Breakfast Extra. Do stay with us. 5 years ago, Nigeria witnessed one of the largest youth-led movements in its democratic history, the #EndSARS protests. Now, it began as a call to end police brutality, but soon evolved into a nationwide demand for justice, accountability, and reform. From Lagos to Abuja, Port Harcourt to Enugu, young Nigerians took to the streets, united under one voice, Soro Soke. I'll fast forward to 2025 and the question still lingers. Has anyone or anything truly changed? Despite promises of reform and disbandment of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, many young Nigerians say extrajudicial killings, extortion, and police abuse persist in new forms. Our families of victims continue to demand justice, with panels set up across states reporting limited or no implementation of their findings.
Also, it's a painful reflection, Darshan. I mean, according to reports from Amnesty International and Al Jazeera's recent feature, several victims' families still haven't received compensation, and no significant convictions have been made against officers, accused of abuse. Even the Lagos State Judicial Panel of Inquiry, which sat for over a year, found evidence of rights violations, including the controversial, of course, Lekki tollgate shooting. Yet many of its recommendations remain unimplemented. Meanwhile, a generation once hopeful about reform now wrestles with disillusionment, rising youth unemployment, and political disengagement. So still, of course, the legacy of the protests lives on in art, in activism, and in the ongoing call for a better Nigeria.
Well, before our guest joins us, let's take a look at this report.
It's a regular Monday morning at the Lekki tollgate. No placards, no chants, no protests. But this is no ordinary Monday. Today marks 5 years since the EndSARS protest, when security forces opened fire on demonstrators calling for an end to police brutality in Nigeria. The usual bustle at the toll plaza was accompanied by a heavier than normal presence of security personnel, a reminder of the event that once shook the nation. Some say the silence is deliberate, an attempt to make Nigerians forget that October 20th, 2020 ever happened.
Our hashtag today is "We will never forget." And we must. I mean, there's myself and my colleague Nanre, who's here, who's a scholar who has been talking about this whole notion of history and why we deliberately forget and don't amplify so people can move on and don't have a reference point. Imagine this is 5 years. A child that was born 5 years ago, by the time they turn 10 in 2030, what would their understanding of EndSARS be?
In previous years, some gatherings and memorial protests have been held to mark the day, but this year, the Lagos State Commissioner of Police led a show of force across the state to ensure there were no demonstrations.
Before now, we have made massive deployment to all the traditional locations in Lagos where protesters used to come out. And I'm going around to observe the situation of things. Like we have seen there, no single protester have come out here. And our confidence building patrol, which we call the show of force exercise, is to ensure that the members of the public go about their lawful business and other responsibility and fear and apprehension.
When asked if the police have experienced any meaningful reform since the protests of 2020, the commissioner said the force has indeed witnessed improvement in manpower and equipment.
There have been a lot of series of reform initiatives that have been carried out by the Inspector General of Police, IGP, Olukayode Adegbetokun, PhD, MPM, that have been culminated in a lot of welfare improvement for all officers and men of the force. If you can see, even in the turnout of our uniform, you can see how bright we are than what we have in 2020. Even in terms of equipment and the motorized patrol team, you can equally see improvement in our equipment and in the deployment of logistics to protect life and property throughout Lagos State. And I say same throughout the country.
Shortly after the commissioner's departure, a mild drama ensued. Executive Director of Enough is Enough Nigeria, Yemi Adamoleku, attempted to lay flowers at the toll gate in remembrance of those who lost their lives. She was, however, stopped by security operatives who claimed that the gesture could attract unwanted attention.
And 5 years after, at the Lekki tollgate here, the epicenter of the EndSARS protests in Lagos, there's peace and there's calm. The only thing we can notice is the heavy presence of police officers. However, there are questions that are yet to be answered. Have Nigerians forgotten about EndSARS? Did the struggles of the youths who were here for days go in vain? And of course, have their demands been met, or has it been swept under the rug? In Lagos for News Central, Bernard Akede.
Well, joining us this morning to unpack what 5 years of reflection has revealed is Francis Nwakpa. He is National Secretary of the Youth Rights Campaign and one of those who continue to advocate for police accountability and governance reform. Thank you for joining us, Francis.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Francis, 5 years on, many young Nigerians say little has changed. I mean, from your perspective, what's the most significant outcome, or will I say setback, of the hashtag #EndSARS movement since 2020?
Yeah, thank you. This is the 5th year where we commemorate the loss of life. Not just that, but also to chronicle some of the events, that took place that led to young people pouring on the streets, where young people over the years continue to clamor to end a rogue police unit that had an absolute power to kill, to detain, rape, rob people of their properties, and so many other crimes, being committed by this rogue unit called SARS. And all of this clamor did not just, of course, the ruling elites were aware of all of this clamor, and so they said in 2016 that they are going to disband SARS. In 2017, 2018, and they went on until the events that took place, in the Delta State, where a young artist was killed by this same rogue unit, and the young people decided to take to the streets and say enough is enough. That we are going to, we are going to end. We are going to push, for this SARS, this particular unit to be disbanded. However, beyond that, was the fact that it was not just about SARS, it was not just about SARS, it was also about the living condition of young people, where they no longer feel safe in their own country. They can't, they have no access to, to justice, in their own country. And so the young people decided to pour on the streets. And 5 years after, despite the fact that the police and the state said they disbanded SARS, police brutality has continued unabated, and this demand for justice, is going to continue until the young people, feel that, justice has been served.
Francis, you talked about, how it took time for the SARS to be disbanded, and the government promised police reform, and also to set up judicial panels across several states as well. So why has there been so little visible progress in implementing the recommendations?
Yes, the truth is, the setting up of a panel was not intended to unravel what caused, the young people to be on the street in the first place. The intention of the Lagos state government and the Buhari administration back then, setting up this panel, was to distract the young people, was to be a means of distraction. And that's why you see that all of the states where this panel was set up, nothing happened, except for Lagos state, where we were on their neck, ensuring that, the genuine cry, of the young people is not being swept under the carpet. And, this, gave birth to what the ruling, of that panel, which established that young people were actually killed, not just at the Lekki toll gate, but across Lagos state. Hundreds of persons were killed, which they cannot be accounted for. And so, because the ruling elites never genuinely set up this panel to unravel what actually happened and to punish those who are responsible for it. And that's the more reason why you cannot find, justice cannot be served. It was not genuinely intended to unravel what happened. All of the guys who participated, who were SARS, as far back as then, have been reintegrated into the system. They are now serving in various other units, within the police. You have Jason Warford in Anambra State. It was during the protest that we got to know that he was serving in the government house, under Obiano, there. This is a guy who carried out several massacres, of young people in Okuzo SARS, headquarters. So it wasn't genuinely intended, to unravel what happened and to punish those responsible for it. But it was just about causing distraction, believing that once they set up that panel, young people will be distracted and they just sweep everything under the carpet.
Now, Francis, we've seen cases where victims of families still struggle to be heard or even compensated. What does this say about the justice systems in Nigeria and also the credibility and the empathy for ordinary Nigerians?
It's pathetic. It's not just about those who have not been compensated. But I can categorically tell you right now that there are young people after the EndSARS who were still being tailed to their houses, to their offices, just because they were speaking up as victims of EndSARS. Some of them, in fact, one of them was attacked somewhere around in Abuja. He was macheted, he was beaten, that she should stop talking, she should stop speaking up. In fact, one of them, as I speak to you, has relocated out of Lagos State because he was on constant attack by the Maroko policemen. I'm speaking this authoritatively because we were part of all of this movement, and we have the contact of all of these victims of EndSARS, EndSARS. Those that were shot, those that were amputated, those that were, that died. We are in connection, we are in contact with their family, and so I'm speaking authoritatively because this has continued. It's not just about those that we are not compensated, but those that are alive that are being threatened to stop speaking. And so we live in a country where impunity continues to thrive, where the judicial process, has been hijacked, and in fact, as of today, there is a coup in Nigerian democracy because all of the things we see happening today, not just about the EndSARS, they are alien to democratic practices. And so what we have today is a coup against the democracy of Nigeria. The judiciary have been hijacked. All of the processes that are supposed to be democratic have been hijacked by certain elements within the system to make sure that the arm twists, the law and the judicial pronouncement to favor of those who control power today.
All right, well, Francis, you did say that, we're even despite the disbandment of SARS, we're still seeing extrajudicial killings. And it seems that, the problems in the beginning that started this whole EndSARS protest has not abated. And a recurring concern also is that new police units often replicate the same abuses that SARS was accused of. So why do you think that systemic reform has been so difficult to achieve despite public outrage?
Thank you. It is easy to show to everybody that under a system like this, a capitalist system where the structure, the security apparatus are designed to protect that capitalist structure, that such a system, you cannot have a reform under such a system. What reform do you want to have that would stop the IG of police from brutalizing protesters? There's no reform because the IG of police is answerable to the president. And the president is operating under a system that is designed to benefit just a few individuals. And so there is no way, there is no reform you want to do that would bring about changes within the police. And so it is until such a structure, such a system is upon through a revolution, a working people's revolution, that you can have a genuine reform within the police system. Or else, what we will continue to have is that you're going to have service chiefs removed, just like you have recently, and they bring in another person, and it continues because that the system is designed to protect that structure. You have Muyiwa removed as police PRO. You have Benjamin Hundeyin brought in. You see the same Benjamin Hundeyin speaking. I mean, what should not be had? Justifying abuse of police power, justifying abuse of court order, and so that is how it's going to be, because they are designed to protect the capitalist structure, which is designed to enrich and give power to a few individuals.
Now, Mr. Francis, when we talk about, when we look back at hashtag EndSARS protests, one thing that a lot of people can easily remember is the Lekki Tollgate incident. Looking back right now, do you believe the Lekki Tollgate incident was a turning point that changed how Nigerians view state power and accountability?
Yes. What happened in Lekki Tollgate is not just about what happened in Tollgate. Because what happened, we must not forget that what happened in Lekki Tollgate could have been swept under the carpet and nothing would have been done. But let's have a throwback as to how they began to expose themselves. The system began to expose themselves. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the governor of Lagos State, came under interrogation, I would call it interrogation, by Becky Anderson of CNN, and he began to reveal, when he came under questioning, that he was the one that invited the military. And during the panel sitting, the general that was invited to come and give account to testify said the governor invited them, and they began to expose themselves. Now, if the panel had not given such a ruling, we won't be talking about what happened in Lekki Tollgate, because up till today, what happened in Lekki Tollgate is still in denial. The system, the government is still in denial. So we won't be talking about what happened in Lekki Tollgate if, number one, the role the Nigerian media played in unraveling the truth, not just in Nigerian media, but international media, because CNN did a documentary of how the military left their barrack and advanced towards the toll gate and started shooting, because they came to tell us that what DJ Twitch did, the video, the live video she did, was a lie. And so you see how all of these actions, both the media, both the young people, and the panel, and activists and civil society organization helped ensuring that what happened in Lekki Tollgate was not swept under the carpet. And the world, has kept on, pushing that until justice is done,
But Francis, speaking about it not being swept under the carpet, some quarters have actually argued that the EndSARS protest lacked structure and leadership, which is the reason why, it was easy for government to dismiss its demands. How do you respond to that?
Well, the EndSARS protest, just like every other, protest, we have been part of, has its own weaknesses. But the weaknesses are for us to learn from. The government also learned from it, from the EndSARS. And so the weakness is one of it, of course, is the fact that the young people, felt that there was no need for leadership, during the protest, which people like us kicked against. But the truth is that it's about what that heroic movement was able to achieve. That heroic movement was able to raise up young layers of activists in Nigeria. Because that was what transcended into what happened in the 2023 election, general election, where young people came out massively to reject the APC government, whether the person they went, whether the party they went for, or whoever they went for was correct. That's not the case now. But the fact that the young people came out massively and rejected, the current administration, and the truth is, in Lagos State, the stronghold of the APC, President Tinubu lost election in that place. That is an effect of the NSAS protest, So the achievement of the NSAS is what we should focus on, and those are the part of the achievement. And yet the consciousness of the young people, to begin to ask for their demand. As of today, young people can see police committing certain crimes, stopping people, abusing people, and bring out their phone and continue and record such incident. In the past, you can't do that. The SARS will arrest you and put a gun, in your hands and say you are an armed robber. But today, most of the things that have been exposed today as a result of the achievement of the NSAS protest. Today, nobody is collecting toll at the Lekki toll gate. Those are part of the achievement of the NSAS protest. So we will rather focus on some of the achievement of the NSAS protest than the weakness on some of the we have learned from some of the mistakes that we have done, and so moving forward we'll continue to build on some of what we said, some of those strategies.
Thank you so much, Francis Nwakba, for joining us and sharing those reflections. 5 years after #NSAS, the memories remain raw, but so does the hope that Nigeria can still learn, reform, and heal from it. The struggle for justice and accountability continues, and as history shows, the youth have never stopped speaking truth to power. So I guess there's some sort of hope in all of this. Well, thank you so much once again, Francis Nwakba, for joining us on the show. This is Breakfast Extra. Stay with us. We'll still have more coming up. Now, some women marry power, and then some women become power. Nana Akufo-Addo was not just Ghana's former First Lady, she was Ghana's first force. A trailblazer, an activist, a reformer. She didn't stand behind Jerry Rawlings, but she stood beside him, sometimes even ahead of him. From the days of military rule to democracy's rebirth, Nana Akufo-Addo was both the fire and the forge. She wasn't content to play the ceremonial role of First Lady. She wanted to reshape what that title meant. Through the 31st December Women's Movement, she pushed thousands of Ghanaian women from the margins into the marketplace, giving them loans, education, and political voice. She turned charity into change and social welfare into strategy.
Now, to some, she was bold to the point of defiance, and to others, she was the conscience of Ghana's democracy. She questioned power, even when power was in her own household. In a continent where first ladies were expected to smile and wave, she stood up and spoke the truth. Her advocacy for women's rights was not a slogan. It was a movement that transformed communities from Accra to Tamale. She pushed for girls' education, reproductive health, and equal opportunities long before gender equality became a global buzzword. Nana Akufo-Addo was, in every sense, Ghana's feminist before feminism was fashionable.
Now, her journey wasn't without turbulence, of course. The same political fire that made her a national icon also sparked controversy. She challenged her own party, the NDC, for leadership. She ran for president, breaking one of the oldest ceilings in West African politics. Even after her husband's passing, she never retreated into silence. She remained vocal about governance, accountability, and the future of Ghanaian women.
For a generation of young Ghanaian women, she is the original soft life with substance. Now, the woman who proved that grace can be loud, that elegance can be radical, that leadership can wear lipstick and still shake the system. Her legacy is not just written in political history, it's in every woman who owns land, every girl who goes to school, every community that now sees women as leaders and not bystanders.
Nana Agyemang-Rawlings taught Ghana and Africa that feminism is not foreign, it is freedom. That a woman's place is not behind power, but within it. She may not have won the presidential sash, but she wore something more enduring, the courage to challenge the script written for her. She redefined what it means to be a first lady, a political actor, and a woman of Africa. Her story is a reminder that true warriors don't always fight with weapons. Some fight with vision, voice, and unapologetic conviction.
So Nana Konadu Agyemang-Rawlings, a matriarch of courage, a mirror for the modern African woman, a warrior not for title, but for a cause that still calls her name. I will take a break now, and when we come back, the show continues. Stay.
You're still watching the Breakfast Extra, of course, and now is the time, or that part of the show, where we take on our news strips. Of course, we look at different cartoons and expressions on our print, and we're just going to go straight into it right now. And I'm hoping that, okay, so the first one we have is, I'm trying to see from the Business Day, of course. We can see representation of someone that looks like someone in power. The glasses is given, of course. But of course, we can see that he's quite wearing an outfit that looks, is it oversized? Sorry, undersized now. But anyway, there's a second term there. Yes, endorsements in his on his basket. Darshan, I need you to help me out on this one.
All right, well, what I'm seeing is quite different from what you're seeing. Yes, of course, it does look like someone in power, but it looks like, you know, the person in power is pregnant, right? And then you
pregnant.
have,
I thought it was, just, the person being well fed. I was thinking anyway,
because look at it, they're in a hospital, obviously, and the baby, you know, the baby is, you know, crying out for its mama, and you have the baby leaving the neonatal governance ward crying for its mama, who is pregnant with a second term. And, you know, while the mama is, you know, heading towards antenatal politics ward, leaving their baby and moving towards the second term. I'm sure it's very obvious, and we know what all that means. So
I think it suggests that, you know, someone is really just particular of their, you know, the second term bid right now more than anything else. Nothing else matters to this mother. Who looks like a leader, and to her right now, all that matters to her is a second term that she's about to give birth to. So that's quite interesting. All right, let's move over to another one now. This one is from the Daily Trust, and it's quite interesting because you can see the map of Nigeria right there in our faces. But what I love to, what I can see here is someone that is obviously a clergy man. Yeah, he's standing on funding. Interesting, and he puts that big placard right there: genocide. Islamization also somewhere in the bottom. Okay.
Well, the cartoon alleges deliberate reframing of a public narrative. You know, that's like switching levels to suit political aims, with money driving the change, if you ask me. So the funding sack that the clergyman is sitting on, you know, probably stands for, we're saying allegedly now here, right? Allegedly stands for financial backing. You know, the nailing of the genocide sign stands for allegedly an active, deliberate attempt to harden a more extreme label over a prior one, right? And the discarded Islamization that's in the trash suggests that the earlier framing is being abandoned or even made inconvenient too. And the map of Nigeria shows that the issue is national and affects identity, affects religion, it affects the north, south, whatever tensions, you know, there is. So the likely context or critique suggests that, you know, actors, I'm talking about political groups, media activists, or even funders, are shifting the narrative away from what it used to be to something more powerful.
And it's quite interesting because what got my attention in all of these is the fact that a clergyman standing on funding. That's quite interesting, enabling him to, carry out a particular function. One would expect that being a clergyman, some things of this world shouldn't be getting the attention or be enticing to them, but it looks like it's quite different.
Well, since genocide is the framing now, the clergyman is the perfect person to actually carry out that narrative. So,
but standing on funding?
Yeah. So.
Quite interesting. Let's move on to the next cartoon now. This one is from the Business Day as well. This one was quite interesting because it talks about coup, something that seems to be rampant in Africa at the moment. Now, you can see the military, obviously a military man saying, there is no coup. Yeah, but then someone else comes to say, there's only corruption. And they put, changes some letters in there and putting some things there. Well, I think this talks about our dear country, Nigeria. We heard what happened recently as regards the alleged coup plot, on our Independence Day, and then we saw that, of course, the military denied it, said there was nothing like that happening. But I believe that, Dasha, we can both agree that there's something that's quite affecting us now in Nigeria, which is corruption. So
it has been affecting us for a really, really long time. And I think it's quite a linguistic play there, actually, if you ask me, showing how accusations or realities are actually reshaped, suggests that there's a cover-up or there's actually a shift in the first panel talk about a coup and the military guy saying that there is no coup. And then the second talks about corruption. So instead of a coup, it is only corruption. So, there are comments on episodes of alleged coup, security interventions, or even political crisis being downplayed, while systemic corruption persists. And this could actually target governments that deny instability while tolerating, corruption or any form of graft.
All right, let's move on to the next cartoon. Let's see what we got this time. This one is from the Daily Trust. We can see that's a big boot, if you ask me. And it's trampling on someone who's carrying the right to protest and democracy. Police tear gas free Nnamdi Kanu protesters. Tear gas. I think this talks about what happened during the course of the week. Of course, we had that protest being led by Moyele Sowore, talking about the hashtag free Nnamdi Kanu now. And you can see right there, man, whoever is under this booth, I don't see the person making it out alive. The person is really crushed. And I think this is what has been happening since after NSAS. I think NSAS kind of opened the government to knowing exactly how, what protests can become in Nigeria. And ever since then, I noticed that they're quick to quell. They're quick to quell, the fire before it even picks up. If you look at all the hunger protests and every protest that happened, especially since this administration started or kick-started, you can see that from the first day or probably the second day of the protest, you realize you see high-handedness from the police, you're seeing tear gas, and you're seeing them disperse people. And before you know it, the protest doesn't really gather momentum like it did in 2020. So I think that's probably what we can see in this cartoon as well.
And on the flip side, you talked about the person not making it out alive, but, what I can see is the police, trying to stifle the protesters, trying to stifle dissent. So if that boot does not kill the protesters, if the tear gas beside them does not kill them, and you can see the protester, despite being squashed, still holding up placards saying, if you like, kill me, I will still. Yeah, I'm telling you, we no go agree. So, it just shows some form of doggedness on the protesters' side. And the fact that, they're ready to change the narrative when it comes to some certain issues.
Well, let's move on to the next cartoon, if there's any. Okay, of course, this one is quite interesting. Okay, this looks like someone in power as well, watching something on screen. It's right, IPOB demands referendum. Oh, okay, interesting. But he seems to be sitting on, I was going to call it, we can call this a cage now, yeah? Yes, we call it a cage. And someone who obviously looks like he's from a particular region in Africa, in Nigeria rather, is right there in there. Wow, interesting. I'm just hoping that this is not a case of you watching something and not following suit or not knowing exactly or not following what you are actually preaching at the end of the day. But then you can just see from this cartoon, it's quite describes a lot that happened also during the course of the week. And this has been happening way before this administration even started. So it's quite
well, I'm
interesting.
sure looking at the cage man, we already know who that character is, and it still talks about, stifling dissent, talking about him being in a cage and all that, talking about suppression or detention of Nnamdi Kanu and lack of political solutions. So his freedom has been withheld, despite being visible, right? And the remote control viewer, so it looks like somebody in power as well, talks about the elites or public who are spectators rather, than actors. So there's a power dynamics, and it keeps the oppressed isolated. And then when you talk about what was showing on the screen, it talks about the media spotlight that can either inform or trivialize the deeper grievances. So all in all, comments on the handling of the Biafra IPOB issue. I'm talking about detentions, the call for referendums, and even the disconnect between political discourse and substantive resolution is what I can actually see, in this particular strip.
I think it also tells us one thing as well, that those in power are actually informed, because sometimes you think
they are.
Sometimes
they
you think they don't read the news, or they don't know exactly what's happening. But this just tells you that they actually know what is happening. But we just don't know why they haven't chosen to act right. Anyway, let's move on now to the very last cartoon for the day. This one is from the Free Delusion Now. Okay, Justice for Judiciary. We can see the Supreme Court, and it's not looking good at all. What do you call that lady?
Lady Justice, right?
Lady that holds the sword and what's that thing on?
And
on
the scale,
hand.
the scale.
Exactly. Yeah. It looks like she has been heartbroken right here. I don't know what's happening, but she's tired of standing. Apparently, she needs a seat. She needs to go on a break. She looks like she's hungry at this point in time. We need to order some food for her. What do you think? What do you think, Darshan? She needs food, right?
Well, our producers are saying the translation, simply put, is she don't tire.
When someone is tired sometimes, they might need food. I know someone who can relate to that.
Yeah,
but then
absolutely.
sometimes when you're tired, you need food. So food might just be the one to help. But I think this also just tells us the situation of things right now as regards justice in Nigeria. It's something that we've been talking about, we've been asking, but then I really don't know what's happening.
Yeah, we've
honestly
actually been talking about the independence of the judiciary, and I think, it talks about the judicial system being tired, being compromised, weakened, or even failing to deliver impartial justice as is expected, from Nigerians. And then the broken sword and scales, I didn't even see the scales. I just saw the sword, like it looks like a stick to me.
The scale is gone. There's nothing
exactly.
there.
So it looks like justice stripped of power to enforce and of balance and fairness, right? And the blindfolded figure is in tatters shows that the ideal of impartial justice is wounded or ignored or just, left to rot. And then when you see the debris, that's the smoke near the Supreme Court and all that, it talks about institutional dysfunction, the attacks on judiciary, the lack of independence, or even the chaotic state of legal affairs. So all in all, it addresses the fact that the courts have now been politicized in some way.
That's really sad, because back in the day, the court was a place where people hoped they could find justice. But right now, we're not even sure you'll be served justice if you go the pathway of the law. And that's why when things happen, you see that the person who you claim to be oppressing you is quick to claim that you should go to court. But you're not even sure at the end of the day if what you're going to get in court is something you deserve. But anyway, all we can do is just hope for things to be better and for things to change in our dear country, Nigeria.
Absolutely. I think it can also signal the lack of funding of the judiciary, and also the fact that Nigeria does not care about the judiciary anymore because they have no trust in them, and they believe that they are biased and they've not been fair when it comes to delivering justice. So
when you talk about funding, though, Darshan, I think this particular administration has done the judiciary well in terms of that, because
the judicial officers.
Yes, not too long ago, there was a change in the salary structure, and
for the officers, yeah.
Yeah, I think the Chief Justice of Nigeria right about now should be earning about I think it's about 65 million naira yearly now. So I think there's a change in that. And also one of the projects of the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike, is the judges' quarters in Abuja. So it might not be every officer, right? But top officers in judiciary, it looks like they're taking care of them.
Well, you know, but all in all, it just shows that at what cost? At what cost?
That's a very good
question.
If
you cannot be trusted as the court. So, well, I think those are all the strips that we have for now, isn't it?
Yes, of course. That's all we got for news strips right now on Breakfast Extra. But of course, the show continues right after this.
Breakfast Headlines begins with national security matters out of Nigeria, where the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, is questioning President Bola Tinubu's recent dismissal of the country's service chiefs. The opposition party is demanding that the Nigerian leader provide a clear explanation for the decision. Now, the ADC, while acknowledging President Tinubu's constitutional authority to make such a change, has raised concerns about the timing of the move, calling it sudden. This, especially in light of recent reports about an alleged coup attempt in Nigeria. Now, on Friday, President Tinubu announced a reshuffling of the country's security apparatus, but now the ADC is asking whether the government may have been distracted by the coup rumors, calling into question the rationale behind the sackings. In a developing story, the Nigerian police force has clarified the reasons behind the transfer of human rights activist and former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore to Kuje prison. Now, this came just after he was granted bail by the Kuje Magistrate Court in Abuja on Friday. On Friday, Sowore, along with 12 others, was arraigned before the Kuje Magistrate Court, where the court granted him bail in the amount of 500,000 naira, along with 2 sureties. His legal team was in the process of finalizing the bail arrangements when Sowore was unexpectedly rearrested and transferred to Kuje prison. Responding to the incident, Force Public Relations Officer Benjamin Hundain stated that the police acted within the confines of the law in carrying out the rearrest. And now we head to Benue State, where recurrent clashes have displaced thousands and deepened hunger and trauma. State and non-state actors say they are tired of temporary peace talks that lead nowhere. At a peace dialogue on conflict mitigation, which held in Makurdi, the state capital, they say that it is time to tackle the root causes once and for all. News Central's Sewese Anyo reports.
Persistent insecurity in Benue State continues to destroy livelihoods, forcing families into camps and leaving communities trapped in fear and hunger. At a meeting in Makurdi, traditional rulers, security agencies, SEMA, FIDA, youth representatives, and civil society groups say peace efforts have repeatedly failed because they focus on the symptoms, not the real issues.
The way that I used to do, I used to call my people, sit together with them, address them. I say that should be calm. Anything we are going to hear from government. So let nobody carry laws into his hand.
We feeders, we are here to protect the rights of female and the children. If you go to IDP camps, they will tell you how they are raped, but they don't want to come out in persons.
Capacity building on peace mitigation is highly effective. And you can see that is made manifest through the Peace Commission set up by the governor there. These are ways that get towards bringing peace in the state.
They emphasize inclusivity, calling for greater involvement of women, young people, and local voices in resolving tensions between farmers and herders.
As a young person, we are at the direct receiving end of this crisis, because most of the times it is the young men that are being sent out there to go and try to defend these communities. And in most cases, we have recorded fatalities leading to the loss of workforce.
The only solution there is when there is peace. And for now that there's no peace, it's a problem because the women and the children are suffering it seriously. But we know one day peace will come and there'll be a way forward. Our prayers now is to see peace in our communities.
Stakeholders are now pushing for a long-term community-led approach that prioritizes accountability, inclusion, and trust to chart a path towards lasting peace in Benue. In Benue, for News Central, Sewesi Anna.
Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma has commissioned newly renovated detention cells and administrative blocks at the anti-kidnapping unit of the State Police Command. The renovation is part of ongoing efforts to improve operational efficiency and create better working conditions for officers tackling violent crimes in the state. News Central's Alex Ogbonaya reports.
It is a fresh look for the anti-kidnapping unit of the Imo State Police Command, a facility now transformed after extensive renovation and upgrades. The project features refurbished cells with basic toilet facilities, upgraded offices, and improved administrative blocks. It is aimed at enhancing officers' welfare and ensuring a more humane environment for detainees.
To the glory of God.
Governor Hope Uzodinma, represented by his Chief of Staff, Nnamdi Anyihe, commended the police leadership for its efforts in curbing crime across the state.
We have a determined security apparatus under the distinguished and excellent governor of Imo State, who has ensured that no stone left unturned in making sure that the Imo and Imolites sleep with their two eyes closed. And he has been discharging his endeavors excellently to the glory of God.
State Commissioner of Police Aboki Danjuma said the project aligns with the IG of Police Reform agenda, one focus on professionalism, accountability, and improved policing standards nationwide.
The unit have so many suspects they arrested, in which interrogation is still ongoing. The beautiful cell constructed by His Excellency, the Governor of Imo State, it will be used to discongest these units.
With the commissioning of these renovated facilities, the Imo State Police Command says it is now better equipped to sustain the fight against kidnapping and violent crimes across the state. In Imo for News Central, Alex Ogbonaya.
Now to election matters. The Accord Party says the November 8, 2025 Anambra governorship election will serve as the first major test of Professor Joash Amupitan's leadership of the Independent National Electoral Commission. In a statement signed by the party's national chairman, Accord congratulated Professor Amupitan on his swearing-in by President Bola Tinubu following his confirmation by the Council of State and the National Assembly. The party urged him to uphold transparency, fairness, and courage in conducting elections as public trust in the process remains fragile. Now the news continues in West Africa. As presidential elections unfold, protests have erupted in southern Ivory Coast, with clashes between demonstrators and police leaving traces of unrest at the entrance of Le Po. Supporters of former President Laurent Gbagbo and ex-IMF executive Tidjane Thiam, both barred from running, are attempting to disrupt the vote. Incumbent President Alassane Ouattara is the clear front runner as he campaigns for a controversial fourth term. Despite the tensions, voting continues in many parts of the country, though the unrest signals deeper political divisions.
Ton propre pays, ton pauvre village n'est pas tranquille. On prend des gens en otage. Actuellement, ils ont pris des gens qui sont à la gendarmerie là-bas. On ne sait pas ce qu'ils ont fait. Vraiment, on est fatigué de ce pays. On est fatigué. Trop, c'est trop. Qui quitte? On est fatigué. On est fatigué. On ne peut même pas manger même. Ils ont pris nos francs, ils sont emprisonnés. On ne sait pas pourquoi. C'est pourquoi. Vraiment, on est fatigué. On est fatigué. On est fatigué. Quand il y a mandat, on ne fait pas.
Bon, chez nous, à l'opposition, on a décidé qu'il n'y ait pas de scrutin. Nous avons décidé qu'il n'y ait pas de scrutin. Ils sont venus, ils nous ont gazés. Mais néanmoins...
Meanwhile, polls have closed and vote counting is underway in Ivory Coast's presidential election, with nearly 9 million Ivorians eligible to cast their ballots. Turnout is expected to play a decisive role in the outcome. Our police stations or polling stations in the economic capital, Abidjan, appeared relatively quiet through the afternoon, while higher voter activity was reported in Wike, the country's second largest city and a stronghold of incumbent President Alassane Ouattara. Ouattara is seeking a controversial fourth term in office, and the final turnout figures could prove crucial in determining the strength of his mandate. And that's all we have for you at this time.
Welcome back. Now we're shifting focus to the heart of our capital, the FCT, where questions of accountability, service delivery and governance are under fresh scrutiny. The Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, has recently made strong statements defending his administration's performance in the territory, while also addressing swirling criticism about how residents are being served. From repeated assurances that grassroots information flow will be improved to bold promises regarding infrastructure, the spotlight is on the FCT's progress or lack thereof. So, is the capital city keeping pace with its role as a national showcase?
Well, what we know is that Minister Wike has dismissed recent reports that his monthly media chat sessions were banned, saying that the dialogue with residents will continue, and he remains committed to keeping FCT residents informed. At the same time, he clarified his stance in the high-profile matter involving Nnamdi Kanu's trial, stating that he will only appear as a witness if formally served a writ or if subpoenaed, underlying his insistence on due process. Now, these interactions raise deeper questions about how the FCT's leadership is responding to public demands, access to information, visible delivery of services, transparency in decision-making, and genuine engagement with residents.
Also remember that in recent weeks, residents and civil society groups in the FCT have raised concerns ranging from delayed infrastructure projects, inadequate public transport links, unclear timelines for housing schemes, and perceived disconnects between the administration and the grassroots voices. But Wike argues that the FCT under his watch is transforming. Now, joining us to unpack this conversation is Martin Obono, who's Executive Director of the TAP Initiative. Martin, thank you for joining us. Now, the minister recently declared that reports of a ban on media charts in the FCT are simply not true. From where you stand, how would you assess the accessibility of information and responsiveness of the FCT administration to ordinary residents?
Thank you so much for having me. I think that it is very clear and glaring. It is not something that you can land and properties are things that you can easily make reference to and see. So if the FCT minister is therefore saying that the land that is being grabbed and people's gardens that are being demolished without prior notice in some cases, and some other cases when the court actually gives them the order to go and demolish and recover those lands, they don't even give the people ample time to prepare themselves for reallocation or prepare themselves to relocate, personally. It's been a very, very big disaster so far, seeing what the FCT minister is doing in Abuja, especially when it comes to gardens, parks, and land reallocation and revocation. So if you look at some parts of the city in FCT, so for example, I was driving beside City Park. City Park is one of the Abuja's first foremost gardens where everybody converged and circled for events, social events, gatherings, restaurants, and the rest of the sports activities. And you just see that some parts of that land has then been allocated for construction of an estate. An estate is actually ongoing in that particular part of the garden, and that is actually against the FCT master plan. When the federal government decided to relocate the capital territory to the to Abuja. The planners of that actually had a vision. The designers of the architects of the Abuja master plan had an idea, considering that, which was consistent of saying allocating 40% of that particular landmass to green area, which was about 8,000 square meters or so, or thereabout. So for essential gardening, and as at the time when this master plan was done, the World Health Organization specified that there should be a certain kind of distance between residents and gardens, just to help for mental health stability and what have you, and recreational activities. But the federal government decided at the time to double that, to ensure that Nigeria did not just meet the standard of the World Health Organization, but they also decided that they wanted to surpass that, and that's why you have a lot of gardens within the FCT, recreational centers and what have you. But for the first time in a very long time, what we have always seen is that citizens convert garden green areas to permanent residents, and then the government reacts. But in this instance, the government is now the one reallocating, violating its own laws, basically, violating the Abuja master plan, and then taking properties or lands and garden areas from citizens themselves, and then converting it to personal use. And not just that, what I actually find very repulsive or appalling is the fact that the FCT minister took land belonging to the University of Abuja, a federal university of Abuja. Yeah. All of us know, we've been to schools and institutions, and we know that you don't develop an institution in one day. And his excuse at the time was that he wanted the University of Abuja was not using the 11,000 hectares that was given to them for development purposes. And he then took a huge chunk of that land, I think 6,000, and allocated it to private people to build on it. His claim was that they weren't ready to build on it. We know that university expands, population of an institution expands. Yeah. Not just that the population of an institution expands, but the institution itself builds infrastructure as the university grows. And then you take that land and allocate it for private use. That contravenes the Land Use Act. Not just that, because the Land Use Act, when to take a property that belongs to the public, it must be reallocated for another public use. But this one, he then allocated it to private individuals.
Well, Martins, this actually seems to be like a recurring pattern, and ministers of the FCT, because I know of a certain governor who did the same thing, took land from the university and allocated it, and was trying to take almost all the remaining land, but a court order actually stopped it. But then away from that, many citizens have said that they still do not see the capital city. That's the vision in their neighborhoods, especially those in the the peri-urban areas within town. And they complain about roads, drainage, power, housing, and even transportation. In your view, what are the biggest service delivery gaps in the FCT today?
So first of all, I would like to commend the FCT minister, to be honest, for the work he's been doing. Nobody can say that the FCT minister has not done well so far in terms of connecting the cities. And I choose my words carefully, connecting the cities. And connecting the cities means, in my opinion, that he's building bridges to connect cities from one zone to the other, one area to the other, which is not one of the things that we have seen since after El-Rufai left FCT as a minister. So he's doing well. I commend him in that aspect. However, what we see is that the minister himself is rather over-concentrating in the city centers. in some parts of the city centers. So what is he doing? He's just busy scraping some of the roads that do not have problems at all, and now retiring them and trying to rehabilitate them. When you have places like Dakibiu area of the town, some parts of Jahi, a lot of other parts of the city where that has been left unattended. Largely, the refuse collection in Abuja is very, very, it's not even happening. You go to a lot of places, Abuja is heaped with so much refuse and dirt, and the FCT minister is not doing so much in that regard. Then even the roads that is claiming to be rehabilitating, those roads in the night are totally dark. There are no street lights to light them up for people to see, and then this also encourages a lot of criminality, because you then see that once you are in traffic lights and everywhere is dark, people break into your car and try to rob you. So this is also has a domino effect in terms of security. If you look critically in what the FCT minister has done so far, you have to tell yourself that he's done well, but he needs to do more. He needs to just not just connect the cities, but build more and newer routes, which is not something that we have actually seen in the past. So it then looks like, the minister is doing too well. He's trying, but he's not. He hasn't gotten to where we really, really want him to go to. He should leave scraping roads and build more roads and construct more roads, basically.
Now, Martin, I mean, you just said it now yourself that, you commend what the minister has done so far in terms of connecting roads in Abuja. And even the minister himself insists that the FCT is moving forward under his watch. What measurable progress do you believe the FCT has made since Wike became a minister? And does that progress justify his defense?
It depends on how you are, because the minister did not just come to Abuja to create roads, to build roads. The minister of FCT is meant to be the governor of FCT. Yeah. And so if I'm going to measure him, I know that you can give him a good mark, maybe good, obviously, credit, for example, on roads construction. But the FCT minister will fail woefully for security. The FCT minister will fail woefully for healthcare. There was a time where primary healthcare were all in strike. I don't know if they've called up the strike up till now, and even primary school teachers also were went on strike. So you can see education, for example. You can see insecurity, security. You can also take healthcare, and then you take constructions of roads, and then you talk about the darkness that is enveloping the FCT. So in total, I don't think the FCT minister is doing well in my books, because governance is not just about creating and building bridges to connect intercities and the suburbs to the main to the center. So he needs to step up his game, basically. And also, government in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it is clearly stated that the actions of government must be humane at all times. The Constitution provided that the actions of government must be humane at all times. Now, Wike has been FCT minister, and what people are going through currently, it is inhumane. It is people going through severe pains, people going through hunger. Wike is literally suffocating land owners in Abuja, property development owners, and that's basically what we are seeing right now. And if you can see clearly, the economic policies of this administration has been really tough on people, and so it's been very difficult for people to have extra funding or extra resources to take care of other things. And so I would have expected that there will be some level of understanding, especially within landowners, especially within landlords and landladies, and park people who have been allocated parks for a period of time to use those parks for recreational activities, instead of going neck deep into frustrating them grabbing their lands, revoking their lands, and bringing more excruciating pains on the lives of residents of FCT. So for me, apart from the roads that he is doing, I was called the FCT minister poor in healthcare, in primary healthcare, especially in education as well, and in the area of insecurity.
What about when it comes to communication, Martins? Because we know communication is one thing and action is another. How do you suggest that the FCT administration approach residents' engagement to move beyond media statements or media parleys into tangible service outcomes?
So the FCT minister behaves like he is cool, a very how do I call this now? He behaves like a dictator. Let me use the the word for governance. So he behaves like a dictator, a village headmaster for the better use of words, for the lack of better use of words. Because what he does is just sit down and dictate to journalists who in most cases don't even ask him questions that are critical to the development of FCT, and they just sit down there and listen to him, and he rabbles and says a lot. I mean, I don't watch FCT minister talk in one of those of his media chats or parley, because it's just an absolute waste of time. Half of the time he's talking politics, he's not really talking about development. More than half the time he's talking about PDP problems, Labour Party problems. What's his business? You know, he's now the minister of FCT. He's the minister of PDP, APC, Labour Party, ADC, and Babalawo people, Christians, Muslims, and what have you. The minister has no business discussing politics using taxpayers' money to keep people engrossed. And if you even say that he is communicating to who? He's just saying things that he wants to say. Rivers State, he wants to talk about politics, and he is not engaging people. If you want to engage people, gather the people who own Garden Association of FCT, I don't know, whoever they are under the umbrella, and address them. This is stakeholder engagement. Have town hall meetings, hear from the people themselves. You're not talking down on people. I hear him, the way he talks down on journalists during his media parley, and it is totally appalling, for journalists to sit down 1 hour, 2 hours, listen to Wike, talk down on them, impose his ideas on them. It is totally unacceptable. And I think that if he needs to communicate, there are better ways to do that communication, other than sitting down on a golden chair and try to force and shout down people. Sometimes, even when you just see some snipers, you see how journalists are trying to ask questions and he's shutting them down, using derogatory words. No, that is totally unacceptable. That to me is not communication. That to me is not community engagement. That to me is not engaging the citizens and residents of FCT. It is not.
Martin, honestly, I think what got me what you just said now is the golden chair, because I'm not even sure the president sits on the golden chair during his presidential his media parley. But what I want to ask you, is it really about him having a media parley, or it's about what he says during his media parley? Because personally, I feel like it's something strange. I don't think any other minister does a media parley, a media chat, or has a media chat.
So it will have been highly commendable that the minister of FCT is having a media chat, if that media chat was beneficial to the people. Half the time, or more than half the time, he engages in politics, things that don't concern FCT residents. You're talking about politics in Rivers State. You will sit down, Wike will sit down and have a media chat to talk about Rotimi Amechi. Rotimi Amechi is not... Rotimi Amechi was the former governor of Rivers State. You dedicate time to talk about Similaye Fubara, the current governor of Rivers State. You dedicate time to talk about the president's politics and how he is, what the president is doing in terms of politics. You dedicate time. So if he were to be communicating or having a proper conversation online, talking to people and engaging them to say, okay, I'm doing this media chat because I want to improve governance. I'm doing this media chat because it is a feedback for me to know exactly what I'm doing and what I'm doing wrong or what I'm doing right. What areas do you think I need to improve? It would have been a lot more better than to engage in politics or national TV when we are not even in the area of politics, in the time of politics, as it were, when we are not in elections, and then you just sit down and talk down on people, drop names, call names, address people in such a derogatory manner without respect, without considering that you're on national TV. That is where the problem is. It is not about the media pally. It is actually about the content of that media pally for me.
All right, now, well, thank you so much, Martin Obono, for joining us and sharing your views and insights, into what is happening in the FCT. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we all know that the gap between, what is happening in the FCT and what the residents are actually going through is quite huge. And we hope that, that particular gap is closed in no time. And that is from Breakfast Extra on this story. That is all for Breakfast Extra on this story. Stay with us as we bring you more updates. And now to our next big story. Now, the government of Osun State has announced the appointment of Afrobeat superstar Davido as chairman of the newly created Osun Sports Trust Fund. On the surface, it is billed as a bold and fresh approach to boosting sports development. But some quarters have actually said that it raises questions about strategy, merit, and possible nepotism, as Davido is also related to the state governor, and whether a music icon is the right person to lead such fund. Adding to the intrigue, Davido was recently in France meeting with President Emmanuel Macron. That kind of international engagement suggests extra weight behind the appointment, but it also magnifies the expectations.
Now, according to the announcement, Osun State's government says the Sports Trust Fund will serve as a financial and administrative vehicle to attract investments, donations, and sponsorships from within and outside the country to support sports infrastructure, talent development, and youth empowerment in the state. Now, the appointment of Davido is framed by the state as leveraging his global brand, philanthropic credentials, and influence among youth to reposition the state's sports sector. The questions are already being asked. Why Davido? Does his experience in entertainment translate to sports fundraising and administration? Is this a strategic move or simply a high-profile appointment meant more for visibility than actual deliverables? Right now, we're joined this morning by Enita Obadina, who's editor, Sports Intel Nigeria, and Daniel Adaja, a broadcast journalist. Both, of course, are joining us to unpack all of this. So let's get into it.
Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
So let me begin with you, Enitong. Let's start with the sports angle. How unusual is it to appoint someone from the entertainment world to head a major sports development fund? What are the pros and the cons in your view?
I think we have more pros than cons because if you look at it, for sports as a product, it's also an entertainment product. There's an entertainment element to sports because you cannot just take people to the stadium, to the track, or to the boxing ring just to watch the sports alone. You also have to entertain them and give them more reasons to come to the venue. And so having a sports person, an entertainment person coming to a sports scene is like a marriage of two powerful forces coming together. You also have to understand that this entertainment, the aspect of entertainment that Davido is coming from also has to do with music with a youth culture. Nigeria has a youth population, so we can keep drilling down at different layers of what it portends for the country and what it holds. In terms of merging entertainment and sport, having an entertainment person come on board means you are merging two powerful forces, raising funds to be able to push their agenda for sport. So it's actually a welcome development if you look at it holistically.
From your analysis, do you think Davido has the requisite background to lead the Osun Sports Trust Fund in terms of sports management, fundraising, and an oversight, or is this more of a symbolic, or let me say, a visibility-driven appointment?
I think it's a combination of both, and I will explain. Davido, if you ask me, basically Davido should stick with fundraising. He has proven that. We've seen how he has raised fund for himself Now, I'm stressing that we are specifically so that you understand where I'm coming from. He has raised funds for himself. He also has a huge global brand. He has worked with the sport brand that as an ambassador, so he has that connection that you can probably bring it. But I would rather advise that Davido stays with the fundraising part and leave the sports management to the other core professionals within the sphere in Osun State to be able to have that perfect alliance between a proven fundraiser and, of course, putting that fund into sport, because sport is very sport is special. Sport is an event or a product that requires patient capital, and those capital usually they have to be huge to be able to have a big effect on making it big in Osun State, catching up with other states that are already doing well and investing in grassroots. So it's good to leverage its global brand, global. There are places Davido can walk into and say, hey, we are doing sports in my state, I'm working with my governor, and I think it's something you'll be part of. His first presence will get people smiling, and once you get sponsors smiling, you never can tell what you get out of them when you have them, when you make requests as that, and knowing that the personality of the video is behind it gives them an extra push, because of course their brand will also have it will rub off on their brand, having the video coming around with his huge following and huge numbers. So it's a strategic, and it also involves leverage, but at the bottom of it is it should just stick to fundraising and letting the core professionals handle the sports management to be able to deliver that perfect result they might be looking for.
All right, now let's come to you, Daniel. Now, on the entertainment front, Davido's global brand and recent meeting with France President Macron suggests that he brings international reach, right? Do you think that this global connection can translate into real sports sponsorship, partnerships, or even infrastructure deals for the state?
Absolutely. It will translate to sponsorship. Davido is currently a brand ambassador for one of the biggest sporting brands in the world, and that is one that can be leveraged. Davido is highly connected. This is a global superstar we're talking of, performed in over 50 countries in Africa, and is currently touring. He's coming in a couple of months, and next month in December, he's going to be doing what no artist has done in over a decade. Any mainstream superstar artist has done in over a decade in Nigeria, which is to go around Nigeria. So his leverage, his personality, the opportunities that he can bring to Osun State are enormous. He has a huge following of young people. He can access doors that letters would not be able to open. In one of his previous videos, he talked about having contacts of presidents on his phone. And I don't think that there's anybody that Davido wants to reach out to now, and he tells them, I'm in charge of this, I want you to come on board, that they wouldn't say, you know what, let's have a conversation around it.
Oh, but let's look at it, Dana, let's look at it from an accountability point of view, right? Now, given the state governor's family link to Davido, how important is this transparency? How important is transparency, rather, in this situation?
To be fair, public trust is built, is very important in this conversation. But I think that one of the things that we can leverage is that Davido as an individual has shown that, in terms of accountability, one that doesn't joke with it. When he raised money for himself a few years back, we saw how the execution of that project, which went on to go on for donations into charity, we saw how that fund went. He was transparent about it, and that was something that we can give him credit for. And music is not something that doesn't hold a lot of accountability. To be able to operate at that level of quality, where the body of work you're doing has global relevance, it takes a lot of accountability to be able to sell out arenas, to be able to do shows in multiple cities. You cannot maintain that global relevance if you are not accountable, either yourself or even with the team that you work with. So as much as, yes, there is a lot of ties between Davido and the governor of the state, Davido being the nephew to the governor, I think we would have to watch and look how this will play out. But I really believe that there will be a huge accountability on the side of Davido and his team. It's now left to the Osun State government, the team on the Osun State government side, which, like Enitos talked about in terms of administration, ensuring that the money that is being generated, the money that is being made for the people of Osun State is used effectively and rightly.
All right. Well, we'll have to take a quick break on this conversation. When we come back, we will definitely continue. Do stay with us.
Welcome back, of course. It's still Breakfast Extra here, and we're having a conversation with Eniton and Daniel as regards to Davido's appointment as, of course, chairman of the Sports Trust Fund in Osun State. Eniton, let me go to you now. For the youth and athletes in Osun State, they will definitely be watching for real change. What key metrics or, let's say, deliverables should the Trust Fund produce within the next, say, 12 months to show it's not just window dressing?
Basically, at the core of sports development, especially for states in Nigeria, what you have to understand is you have to look out for contributions into facilities. Facilities are one of the most important aspects because the youth in Osun State, especially in sports, the youth engaged in sport will need to move around and have places where they can run, where they can play football, basketball, and other types of sports that are being introduced to the country. So it's important for that to happen. So they should start seeing foundation laying ceremonies across every local government in Osun State, springing up sports parks where they can play a combination of sports, and that's where they can start having an idea that something is happening. It's not so much about just raising funds. It's also important to know that you are seeing direct evidence that we can live for this dream. Already they are trying to build a stadium. If they have not completed that stadium, standardization of that quality stadium, so that not just having that grassroots element, they can also host international sports events to be able to use the pool power that Daniel talked about, for that Davido can bring on board to be able to pull people in into the sports that inspire their youth. So they hope they can start with seeing foundations of sports park across local government, training programs for their coaches, because you have to train the trainers to be able to produce quality. We have the National Youth Games, we have the National Sports Festival coming up next year, and they should start seeing evidences in all those fairs in terms of how they are training, how they are being taken care of, and of course, motivation, especially financial motivation for some of these young athletes. They are mostly breadwinners for their family, and they are putting in a lot of effort. So they should know that the state government is taking good care of them while they are when they are on the sports field, fighting for the name of the state, and of course their own family names too. So those are the important factors. You have to start springing up little facilities, sports facilities here and there across the state.
Daniel, so many people have actually argued that high-profile appointments can distract, from nuts and bolts administration, like, a coach, development, athlete welfare, and the like. So please go ahead and share with us, tell us, let's know what your thoughts is about how should the trust fund, or how can they balance headline goals, how can they balance headline goals, or headline grabs with heavy lifts of everyday sports delivery?
Well, accountability is very important, and having an agenda. There needs to be a goal in focus on what wants to be achieved, and that is very important. A headline, a high-profile individual like Davido is of course going to draw a lot of attention. And yes, it possibly can get some distractions along the way. But it's very important that there's an agenda, there is a goal, and the focus doesn't move from that. So as much as Davido would bring a lot of spotlights to Osun State, it also gives them an opportunity to see how well they can develop every aspect of Osun State in terms of sport now. And that would require that every hands are on deck, and everyone who needs to begin to hold their teams accountable begins to do that. Davido, on one hand, has shown that he can do great things. He's a global icon. He's hosting shows in arenas that cost fortune to be able to do some of these shows. There are very few Nigerian artists who can boldly say that they fully fund their shows, right? And are able to account for everything, account for safety, account for staff. And all of these things can come into play. I think that with the right structure in place, like Eniton rightly said, if the administrative team is also put in check in ensuring that everything that the Davido's team, the ideas that they are coming with, they are also able to balance it, because Davido will come with his own ideas. His team will come with their own ideas. Investors will come with their own ideas. But the state needs to have an agenda. They need to have a goal in focus. And as long as that goal is categorically stated and is clear for everybody to see, then I believe that everything should go as planned.
Now, finally, gentlemen, before we let you...
If I may come in, please. I just wanted to add to that, because there is one important factor that we also need to see. One is interesting, while we've seen all the pros and the interesting things about Davido coming on board for Osun, One important factor that needs to be added is the policy, the law that makes this a permanent thing and makes it a wonderful structure. For instance, one of the best practices for developing sports in the countries, and of course in other senior climes, you have to be having something similar to call something like a national sports commission, a state sports commission, where professionals, core sports professionals, sport managers are employed. Now, they are the ones that will provide the goals, the headline goals that will be achieved with the funding that Davido is expected to attract. So if we are not seeing that, then you have to also question that aspect of what their plan looks like. You need to have who are the people that you are handing the funds over to, as much as they are going to get the funds. Who are they handing over to? What are the laws or policies from Osun State that will say we are in serious business, that core professionals who sponsor sports or who are in sponsorship can look at your structure and say, this is where we want to come in for the funds. We can't just expect the video to go and just bring in money. What is he going to tell them? Things like we would like to develop sports. This so sport will be our headline sport. Our state is strong in swimming, volleyball, and football. So we would like to develop this, and these are the areas that we think you can come in. Is it coaching, education? Is it facilities development and all of that? So unless we see that aspect added to this appointment, we might just be doing a short-term solution, and of course maybe just having the public image laundering on the long run. So we'll probably need to see more in the area of policies and laws put on ground by the government of Osun State to show that they are ready to marry the leverage that Davido provides with the ambition that they have as to why they appointed him.
Gentlemen, before we let you go, I just want to hear from both of you. Now, if you were asked to give a grade today, say 1 to 10, for the strategy behind this appointment, where would you place it and why? And also, what must happen next to move that grade higher? Let's start with you, Daniel.
I'll say it's a 7. We need to begin to rethink appointments because the traditional systems are no longer effective. We need to begin to think creativity. And this is what I think the Osun State government is doing. They are rethinking creativity. They are looking at how other industries can have a huge impact on the system in the state. What needs to move it from a 7 to a 10 is having the right team and the right pegs and the right holes. So it's important, like Enito has highlighted, that they need to bring on professionals, they need to bring on experts, people who can draw a plan, who can evaluate where the state is at, where the state needs to be in terms of sport, what are the infrastructures that needs to be put in place, and then that gives Davido the full backing to go out there. Davido is always going to be on the road as a music artist. He's at the peak of his career right now. So there are access that he has with his endorsement, with his sport brand. He can bring in other investors as he travels around the world. And if he has a good portfolio to always present, a good profile about where the future of the sport is in Osun State and where they want to take it to, I think that they can move from a 7 to a 10.
All right, how about you, any other?
I'll put it at a 5, and simply because all I've heard from them are basically that Davido has been appointed, and also know that they are trying to build, if they've not completed it already, a new stadium. Those are the two things in terms of sport, but I hope to see more in order to push that number from 5 upwards. I want to see the policy and the people who will be driving the policy, so that when the funds come in, when the ideas come in, we have strategic people who are well equipped to be able to drive it forward and make it even a legacy, not just a project, a legacy for the people of Osun State. Beyond any governor, they can always look back and see the impact the governor's decision today of appointing Davido in the next 10-15 years still in the state happening, because they have a plan for it, and any other governor can easily come in, or government can come in and continue with that plan. No brainer, because they would have been successful, and it will be counterproductive to not want to follow that path and bring in their own people to continue in that tradition. So I put it at a 5, and hopefully we get to hear more details in terms of policy arrangement and people spearheading other aspects of this plan going forward.
All right. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I think this is where we wrap the conversation. Thank you, Eniton, Obadina, and Daniel Adaja, for your insights on this. Welcome to Breakfast Headlines. Now, we begin with national security matters out of Nigeria, where the African Democratic Congress is raising concerns over President Bola Tinubu's recent dismissal of the country's service chiefs. The opposition party is now calling on the president to clarify the real reason behind the decision. While the ADC acknowledges that President Tinubu has the constitutional right to reshuffle the security apparatus, they have expressed concern about the timing, describing it as sudden. Now, this comes amidst reports of an alleged coup attempt within the country. On Friday, President Tinubu made the announcement reshuffling Nigeria's top security officials. However, the ADC is now questioning whether the government may have been distracted by the coup rumors, casting doubt on the true motive behind the dismissals. In a developing story, the Nigerian police force has clarified the reasons behind the transfer of human rights activist and former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore to Kuje prison. Now, this came just after he was granted bail by the Kuje Magistrate Court in Abuja on Friday. On Friday, Sowore, along with 12 others, was arraigned before the Kuje Magistrate Court, where the court granted him bail in the amount of 500,000 naira, along with 2 shorties. His legal team was in the process of finalizing the bail arrangements when Sowore was unexpectedly rearrested and transferred to Kuje prison. Responding to the incident, Force Public Relations Officer Benjamin Hundeyin stated that the police acted within the confines of the law in carrying out the rearrest. To electoral matters, the Accord Party says the November 8, 2025 Anambra governorship election will serve as the first major test of Professor Joash Amopitan's leadership of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. In a statement signed by the party's national chairman, Accord congratulated Professor Amopitan on his swearing in by President Bola Tinubu following his confirmation by the Council of State and the National Assembly. Now, the party urged him to uphold transparency, fairness, and courage in conducting elections as public trust in the process remains fragile. Turning to Abia State now, where former gubernatorial candidate of the All People's Party in the 2023 elections, mascot Uzo Kalu, has criticized the performance of Governor Alex Oti. Uzo Kalu says the governor's action so far falls short of the promises outlined in his campaign manifesto. Now, speaking to his supporters in his new party, the All Progressives Congress, Uzo Kalu argued that Abia State deserves stronger leadership than what is currently receiving. He emphasized that the state's potential has yet to be fully realized under the present administration.
The administration room to govern without criticism for over 2 years plus. I acknowledge that some progress has been made under the administration. However, the progress remains far from the lofty campaign promises that were made during the 2023 election period. Abia and Abians deserves more, especially for those grassroots people, including the civil servants, the pensioners, the traders, a government built on transparency, accountability, inclusiveness of progress, a government that serves all and leaves nobody behind.
All our expectations based on what he told us or promised us as of that time had not really been actualized. I'm not too sure, and within my spirit, that APC is taking over almost all the states, and Abia State is inclusive.
Meanwhile, polls have closed and vote counting is underway in Ivory Coast's presidential election, with nearly 9 million Ivorians eligible to cast their ballots. Turnout is expected to play a decisive role in the outcome. Polling stations in the economic capital, Abidjan, appeared relatively quiet through the afternoon, while higher voter activity was reported in Wike, the country's second largest city and a stronghold of incumbent President Alassane Ouattara. Ouattara is seeking a controversial fourth term in office, and the final turnout figures could prove crucial in determining the strength of his mandate. And that's all we have for you on Breakfast Headlines. I'm Darshan Usman.
Welcome back. It's still Breakfast Extra, and it's time for Focus Africa. Now, on Focus Africa this morning, we are turning our lens to the East African nation of Tanzania, where major political drama is unfolding ahead of next month's general election. The long-ruling party, Chama cha Mapinduzi, CCM, is preparing for the October 29, 2025 vote with its incumbent leader, Samia Suluhu Hassan, seeking another term. Now, on paper, it looks like business as usual for CCM, but the broader context raises serious concerns about fairness, competition, and democratic debt. Opposition parties have been disqualified. Critics say the field has been stacked, and observers warn that this may be a tight race, only in name.
Now, Tanzania's 2025 general election will feature the presidential, parliamentary, and local council polls all in one go. Now, President Samia Suluhu Hassan has been cleared by the Electoral Commission to run for a second term, and CCM has nominated her along with running mate Emmanuel Nchimbi. However, the major opposition party, that's Chama cha Demokrasia na Maendeleo, that's Chadema, was disqualified from participating after failing to sign a mandatory code of conduct. Its leader, Tundu Lissu, is also facing serious charges. Now, for Tanzanian voters, especially young people, questions are mounting. Is this election merely a formality to affirm CCM's dominance, or is there a genuine opportunity for competition and change? To unpack all of this, we have Levi Mboshu with us. Thank you so much, Levi, for joining us at this time.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the pleasure is mine.
It's a pleasure. I think we spoke about this, on Friday on the conversation, but it's a good thing we're bringing it up again because we didn't get to conclude our conversation. To begin with, CCM has been in power in some form since independence. What are the key factors that gives the party this stay in power, and why is 2025 being framed as a tight race despite its dominance?
Okay, thank you. CCM has been in power, as you said, for as long as we can remember. I would say that they have, in some way, they have delivered, because it's just about now that we are seeing all these restrictions of political freedom, political space, freedom of expression, freedom of speech that's just in paper. And on the ground, practically, we don't see what we have on paper. When we discussed on Friday, I did say that Tanzanian leadership is failing to deliver on the promises of the founding fathers. CCM has been there, but I think with the tragic event of the death of President John Pombe Magufuli and erstwhile Vice President Samia Suluhu Hassan taking over and stepping in as president, things have kind of changed. I think the taste and the thirst of power keeps mounting, and CCM's stay in power is also due to the fact that there is this tendency we see across Africa, where if there is a party that is state-run, state-owned, and functions almost entirely on state resources, human, financial, logistics, and other resources you may think of, then it gives the leverage. It gives them some kind of unwritten, unspoken leverage to keep staying in power. Only this time, with the restriction of political space and political freedom, which we fear is because of the opponent's verve, political strength, political prowess, and then an appeal to the youths. We all know that youths would always want to clamor for change, but those in power would never, it's not something they want to talk about. Once they get to power, they just want to keep power. It's a shame. We wouldn't see this at the time when the likes of Jakaya Kikwete and a reformer, an astute reformer who was liked by many, unliked by few, John Pombe Magufuli. So that, in a sense, in a nutshell, is what's happening in present-day Tanzania.
Now, Mr. Levi, when it comes, looking at it from your own point of view, from your analysis, how meaningful is the participation of opposition parties in this year? Given that Chadema and others were barred, or will I say disqualified, what does that do to the legitimacy of this particular race?
It puts a dent to the credibility of the elections. And of course, state apparatus, we've seen it across Africa in regimes where they want to oust the main contenders. They go for the contenders who are liked by many. Chadema's leader was, if you look at why he was imprisoned, just because he criticized the electoral reforms and said there was no level political playing ground for all actors to step in and to bring in their own modest contribution. So, in terms of credibility in the eyes of the world, they may have legality, but the legitimacy is what is hugely put to question, because the ruling mass or the ruling class, which do not form the mass, the ruling class would always want to brandish some form of legality, but legitimacy is what's lacking here on the field. A lot of things are happening, political opponents are being squashed, but when you take the key political pundits in the game and then you oust them, you put them out of play, and then you become other parties become punching bags. The parties that don't have as much sway as Chadema and its allies, and as Chadema and its parties and its supporters, we want to very much question the legitimacy. Why fear them if you think that you were playing on a level playing ground? If they didn't have any, if they didn't pose any political threat, then President Suluhu and his acolyte and her acolyte, would not want to put them out of play. So it puts to question the very credibility, the very legitimacy of an electoral system. Remember that the electoral laws were passed, I think just last year, 2024, and the aim of these was to come with reforms that would spark of legitimacy, of freedom and fairness in the electoral process, and also to streamline the process. And then we're getting to general elections, presidential, parliamentary, and council elections. Do we really think that with all that's happening, the political persecution, the turmoil, the clamping down, the charade and the masquerade that's being put up for sure, the political smoke screen in the campaigns that we see, does this speak of any kind of legitimacy? No, that's not my idea of political legitimacy as we see in Tanzania.
All right, Levi, you've talked about, voices being silenced. You've talked about opposition being arrested. But voters have actually dismissed dominant party elections, not just in Tanzania, but in Africa, as predetermined. So what will it take in Tanzania for this election to genuinely deviate from that particular pattern? What signs should we look out for?
I would say that it's more garbage in, garbage out. When you change the rules of the game, when you thwart the rules of the game before the game itself, and mind you that I'd like to say before I continue answering your question, across the globe, where we've had conflict, electoral violence, post-electoral conflict that have actually torn societies apart. We've seen that in Kenya some decades back, or more than a decade back. We've seen that in Cameroon, we've seen that in Chad, we've seen that in Ivory Coast, in La Côte d'Ivoire. We've seen tensions across Africa because of elections. There is one thing, perception. Perception. The leaders should understand that not only should they put in place credible electoral systems, but they should ensure that these systems that are being rolled out are seen positively, are perceived with no ounce of negativity by the very people they claim to lead. From the moment the global mass of the people, the global electoral college, do not feel that there is fairness, then there is a problem. The same cause would give rise to the same effect, as we've seen across the continent. If they want to spin, if Tanzania were to spin things differently, they wouldn't have been doing that now. They should have started from the beginning of the electoral process, where they made sure that everyone had a level playing ground. They made sure that there was no need to silence dissidents. There was no need to imprison political opponents, because by the time you imprison a political opponent, no matter the charges that you put up against him, they will be viewed collectively as trumped up. So if there was anything Tanzania would have done differently to give a sense of credibility to the outside world and to the general public, it should have been to sanitize the electoral procedure, to sanitize the validation of candidacy. You don't go and then you pick up President Samia Suluhu, and then you validate her candidacy, and then you oust candidates like Tanda, Tundu Lusu, and then you want to think that the people would believe, the people would think that election is credible. At the end of the day, everybody would say it. Mainstream media, both in Tanzania and out of Tanzania, are saying that President Suluhu is expected to win. That's always the catchphrase in elections. In La Côte d'Ivoire, everybody's saying that President Alassane Dramane Ouattara is expected to win. In Cameroon, they say President Paul Biya is expected to win. Why do they say that? Because, of course, it's in the collective mindset of the ruling class that they will do everything it takes to win. So Tanzania, this time around, would be no different. It will be kind of business as usual. Of course, not business as usual as in business as usual, but then we expect that every machinery has been put in place. I don't want to refer to the rigging machinery, but when all of this has been oiled and the stage is set, then there is no viable competitor, then what do we expect? It would be the same old story. President Samia Suluhu would glide on to the next term almost unchallenged.
Now, on ground, issues like youth unemployment, rural infrastructure, and service delivery are high on the agenda. How much are these governance issues influencing the race, especially compared to party power and control of institutions?
One thing that's rife in Tanzania is a kind of merging of party and the state. There is a lot of ruling party influence over state affairs, state institutions, parastatals, and the governance question comes again. We would have expected, I think I had this conversation, I said it in a conversation earlier on Friday, that had this regime carried on with the baton and the same strength, the same zeal, the same commitment that we saw at the time of President John Magufuli, then things would not have been where they are today. Magufuli made sure that he disrupted the agenda of corrupt officials, that he silences and takes out niches of corruption and bad governance as they were at the time in Tanzania. He was hailed for bringing in political hygiene. He was hailed for sanitizing the public space. Now we have youth unemployment going up, soaring We have a political class that's almost greedy. We have anti-corruption bodies or state bodies that are aimed to be fighting against corruption, but they don't want to be fighting corruption. They want to be seen to be fighting the corruption. I doubt that this would appeal to the very sensibilities of the youth and of the general public as we find in present day Tanzania. On the agenda, on the political manifesto of those going in, they have all these things they would brandish, but again, sadly, they come in at the time of elections. The electorate at some point would no longer be duped. We would try to fool them some of the time, but we will not succeed to fool them all the time. So my take is that President Samia Suluhu's regime took over from Magufuli, but did not come over into the new era or into the next system with the values that Magufuli had started perpetuating, he had started putting in place. Had that happened, of course, employment would be there. It's always an issue across Africa and across the globe. But then we would have seen palpable results, palpable actions, instead of all the propaganda, the political demagogy, and all of that. So my take is that more or less things would kind of remain the same, because the more things change on the Tanzanian political space, the more they remain the same, particularly with what we see. I say it loud and clear, the shrinking and restriction of political freedom and political space.
All right. Now, aside, some of the challenges that we mentioned earlier about people being silenced and the likes, there are also reports of enforced disappearances and intimidation of critics. For example, former insiders turning into thorny opposition figures as well. So how serious are these allegations, and how do they weigh on the credibility of the electoral process?
Yeah, I tell you that this is one serious problem we have, not only in Tanzania. There are always dark forces. I want to call them dark forces, because political leaders on the ground would always want to silence their opponent, but then they don't want to be seen as being being the direct commandeering force between on these disappearances. But it puts to question the very credibility of a system that comes in the day and preach virtue, and at night they practice vice. When you have key opposition leaders, particularly those who have been from within, and then they come out and they start speaking out against the ills of the regime, this is a thorn in the flesh. This is a fly in the ointment of the regime. They don't like it because they are disturbed. It makes them feel ill at ease. And the next thing they want to do is to silence opposition. People disappear, no trace. We just find out that key opposition leaders are forcefully arrested, no explanation given. They don't taken to unknown locations, and sometimes they are killed, unfortunately. We've seen that across Africa, and then no investigations are open. Nothing is being said about the ruling class. It's total silence, it's total blackout, and this does not speak well of a regime. Of course, in most cases, we would have some government spokesperson come up, talk for a number of minutes without saying anything, and doesn't appeal to the senses, and then come up with arrogance and intimidation, and then instills fear into the mass, into the minds, into the collective mindset of the people. This does not bring credibility, particularly when it's clear. I want to say that there is a Nigerian proverb, I think I heard it came from Calabar. A man accused of stealing a goat should not entertain his visitors with goat stew. If someone, a political figure, leaves government today, and the next day he starts criticizing government, people are bound to listen to him, because they know that he knows the system from within. He has seen, he has touched, he has dealt with the ills of the governing class. So he is better placed to tell the people, and he has a tendency of pulling voters around him. So this disturbs the regime in place. They want to whisk him away, they want to deal away with him, they want to put him out of the game. And when they do that, when something happens to him, it has the hand of government smelling all over him. I tell you a story, just to end. In Cameroon, 2 years back, a journalist was brutally murdered. This journalist was reputed for denouncing financial malfeasance of top government officials. He would come on air, come up with proof, denounce them, say the shady deals they were doing, and then one fine day, he disappears, he's tortured, and they find his remains strewn in some part of in the outskirts of the town. And all of that has government written all over it.
Sad.
So when the same thing happens in a context like what we find in Tanzania, what does it do to the system? It shuts them down. It tells them, watch out. What happens to the fall of a dry leaf is a warning to the fresh leaves. If we put Tundu Luzu in jail because he dared criticize us openly, watch out, you might follow suit. So it's terrible. It, like I said earlier, it puts a dent to the credibility of the entire system.
All right, Mr. Levi, before we let you go, I just want to ask, in the final stretch before voting, what role do you expect civil society or international observers and even the media to play, and how vulnerable are they in this setting?
Yeah, number one, I expect the civil society to follow the electoral process closely, identify the loopholes in the process, and then report them as they are. The media is supposed to be the watchdog of society, and I pray that they indeed play their role as the watchdog. There are civil society organizations, they should come down and in the build up to voting day, I think that's on Wednesday, between now and Wednesday, we expect the civil society to come up and to denounce the electoral process as a sham, to point out the loopholes in the entire process, and then where they find a nexus between these loopholes and irregularities in the elections proper, they should report this. And I would say that the stakes here are that we expect a clampdown. Mind you that what the system does most of the time is that they put these people under the spotlight and under the umbrella of security challenges. State security. They are a threat to state security. So my take is that they should do so, but they should expect clampdown from security forces. They should expect, they should identify issues like voter apathy. They should identify issues like smoke screen voter mobilization, because these are the things that should be reported, and then all the loopholes identified and reported in real time with. Of course, thank God that we live in an era where we have social media and we could always capture these shortcomings in real time. So that's what I expect of the media and the civil society at large.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Levi Mboshu, for joining us this morning with those very powerful insights. It's also worthy to remember that whether this election turns into a genuine contest or simply reinforces the status quo, the implications go well beyond September and October. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much indeed.
Well, that's it for our Focus Africa segment, and we move on to the next after the break. Stay with us.
Still Breakfast Extra, of course. We have the final few minutes before we wrap things up on the show. But before that, we have this interesting conversation. Now, in a trending story, the Nigerian Football Federation, the NFF, is once again at the center of a storm as Nigerians demand answers about how millions of dollars in football development funds have been used over the years. Now, the controversy was reignited earlier this week when popular football content creator and influencer Big Bird, known on social media as @C_Mobike, launched a viral campaign calling for transparency and accountability from the NFF. Now, in his post, he questioned how The federation has managed the huge sums of money it has received from FIFA, CAF, and even the federal government of Nigeria since 2014. Funds reportedly running into tens of millions of dollars, all meant for football development, grassroots projects, and infrastructure.
Now, the campaign quickly gained traction, especially after FIFA posted an image of an abandoned Nigerian stadium, sparking renewed outrage among fans who feel little has changed despite the steady inflow of international support. In response, the NFF released a statement insisting that every money they received from FIFA, CAF, and the federal government since 2014 were used for specific purposes. Now, still questions persist. Nigerians are asking, where exactly did the money go? Why are many football facilities across the country still in ruins? And what does this mean for the integrity and future of football governance in Nigeria? Now, to help us understand this, we're joined with the man who started this new wave of public scrutiny, Bike Chigbo, football content creator, the sports influencer whose campaign has put the NFF under the spotlight. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Let's start with your campaign. What specifically prompted you to raise questions about the NFF's use of FIFA and CAF funds, and what were you hoping to achieve with your post?
First of all, we all can see what the football space in Nigeria looks like at the moment. We all see how the national teams have been struggling over the years and are still struggling. The local leagues, the youth teams, everything is in shambles. We've retrogressed so bad, and it's been a lot of questions and pointing fingers, and people keep wondering, a lot of people keep wondering what is going on. Why are we not advancing? Why instead of improvement, all we are seeing is retrogression. And it's been so, it's gotten so bad. And what also prompted me very recently is, the last international breaks that we had, people kept on pointing fingers at players, making accusatory fingers at players for being the reason why our national teams can't perform, things are the way they are. And they just, sprung this in me to actually point people to the actual direction of where these problems are coming from and why our football space, sports generally in Nigeria, is making zero progress. And that from where we are at this point, looking forward into the future, there is no hope because we don't have any fuel in the tanks. So basically that was where all of this is coming from. And what I'm hoping to achieve with this is a change. We want to see a change. We know our potential. We know the potentials that abound in this country. We know the talents that flock this country. We see them every day around us. But they are just talents, and most of them just die off as talents.
They're not being supported, absolutely, Mobike. Now, you also mentioned figures running into millions of dollars. Now, if you could, can you break down, some of the key areas that you talked about where you believe that the NFF has failed to deliver,
The primary function of NFF, more than any other thing, is fostering football and development, infrastructure-wise and talent-wise. But over the years, they've failed to come up with innovations or programs that will take care of these things. They failed to do that, not even one project over the years. And then we have this initiative that comes through FIFA. And FIFA disburses funds for these things. It's not like it's public knowledge. Like I said, if you go to FIFA website, you see all of it. You see all the FIFA member countries and what projects and everything they have been doing and that have been going on. And it's so painful that, okay, our own federation can't come up with ideas to foster development, infrastructure-wise and talent-wise. And then we are getting these funds to support such innovations. and we have nothing to show for it. For over the years, this program by FIFA has gone. The phase one of it has gone. Second phase of it has gone. We are currently on the third phase of this program, and you look around us, there is nothing really to show for it. So what is going on?
Mr. Mobike, the NFF has responded, and they've said that every fund received since 2014 was used for specific purposes. Do you find that explanation satisfactory, and what specific transparency measures would you like to see from the Federation?
Like I responded to that statement that they did. They just kept repeating themselves, specific projects, specific. I assume you and a lot of Nigerians want to know. They should come out and name these specific projects. We want to know what these specific projects are, because if these specific projects they are talking about, I don't know, like I said, if they are ashamed to tell Nigerians that the mini stadium, the mini pitch they built in Benin Kebbi, which was allocated for almost $1.2 million, that was what they could achieve with that amount of money. And then the second stadium that was supposed to be in Delta State, that to date we can't find that stadium. There's not that stadium. We don't have it. So where is this stadium? So they should come out and name these specific projects and all. And part of these funds are also for part of this fund, like the recent news that came out about the CAF referees, CAF referees that are supposed to be officiating in the next AFCON, where we cannot find any Nigerian referee there. And that is running now for the past 19 years. There has been no Nigerian referee in CAF competition. We can't find Nigerian referee. So if Nigerian referees can't make to CAF competitions, is it World Cup or World Cup that we are going to find Nigerian referees? And part of these funds that has been coming from FIFA, part of these funds that have been coming from FIFA are for training of these referees and coaches,
technical staff,
and all of that. So where are they arranged? Where are these programs going on that we don't know?
Okay.
So what is really going on? They should come out and really explain these projects, where they've done it. Let them just come out and explain, because speaking, using word salad and all of those things hasn't solved anything. To me, they've not responded to us. They've not told us anything.
Absolutely. Mobike, it's quite funny because, after this whole issue went viral on social media, FIFA decided to post the abandoned stadium project.
It's not abandoned.
The one in Kebbi State or the one in Delta State? Well, the one in Kebbi State
the one in Kebbi State has been.
Is that a finished project?
That is a finished project you are seeing.
And it looks like that.
Launched.
Because there were actually a lot of comparisons, between the one in Kebbi State and also the one in Kenya, and they were given the same amount. But they posted that particular one in Kebbi State on the banner of their X page. I know they've not come out to actually say anything, but do you think that the post was a subtle message from FIFA about the NFF's administration and what they decided to do with the money? What are your thoughts?
Of course, you can see, you can read between the lines and understand what is going on. If that is what NFF can achieve with over $1 million, that is what they delivered as a complete project. They've launched it, and this thing I'm talking about is monies way back from 2020, the second phase of the FIFA Forward project. Monies as far back as 2020, and they delivered this project. It was supposed to be 2 stadiums as part of the infrastructural development. It was supposed to do 2 mini football stadiums. This one in Kebbi, which
I actually just also noticed the seating capacity of that particular stadium. How many people can it actually take? Really funny.
I don't even know if it's up to, I don't know if the capacity is up to 100. Also,
I
don't
highly
even
doubt
know.
that.
Because if you look at it, it was just enough for them to. There's a picture that shows the sitting area. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It was just enough to put in FIFA and NFF, just the sittings to have the embedding of NFF and FIFA, so that they can get a picture for it, and that is it.
Mr. Bobike, some people argue that influencers just like you are sensationalizing this issue, and of course putting the NFF under unnecessary or undue pressure. Basically, what's your reaction to people who have this thought?
I don't understand when you mean undue pressure, because the country's sport is already under a lot of pressure. International bodies, international communities, other countries must be wondering what is going on with Nigerian football, Nigerian sports, because this is not the Nigerian. This is not what I grew up knowing. So we're already under a lot of pressure. So I don't understand what he means by undue lot of pressure. Go to the streets every day and see the number of youths every day that their dreams are dying every day. There's no hope inside. There's no hope inside. Even if the national teams don't want to progress, the leagues, what of the leagues? So we're already under a lot of pressure. So the NFF has to come out and tell us a way out of this. And since they themselves cannot, since they cannot even come up with innovations, I'm talking about the ones that FIFA has brought for us. What is going on?
It actually makes you wonder, how Nigeria is actually being seen at the moment, and if, going forward, FIFA or any other international body would want to support Nigeria with any more funds after this particular debacle. But then, beyond social media accountability, are there other steps that should be taken institutionally by probably the sports minister, National Assembly, or even the EFCC to ensure transparency in football funding?
First of all, NFF is an autonomous body of which the government can't interfere. The government can't interfere in NFF affairs and all of that. So it's stuff like this, when we raise awareness like this, because over the years, people don't even care. People really don't even care what goes on in NFF. People just want to watch football, enjoy the national team, just want to see the national team win matches, go to tournaments. People don't really look into what is going on with the NFF or even understand how all of these things are run. Do you get? So it's awareness like this, things like this, what is going to actually have people to look inwards and actually see where the rot is coming from. So, like you asked, the government can't intervene directly. They really can't intervene. And over the years, there have been cases of EFCC and the NFF, and they just bring up the conversation and it dies off. And I'm hoping that this time, that something, will actually get the attention of the people who should actually look into this, especially FIFA themselves.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Bobike, for having this conversation with us. And we hope that indeed the efforts you've put out for this will not just go in vain. Indeed, we'll find an end to corruption in sports, sports department or development in Nigeria. But thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, it's a wrap. We're done with Breakfast Extra for the weekend.
Yes, time well spent, if I must say.
But do not forget, of course, tomorrow we'll have Benga, Olive, and Joe Hansen. Of course, they are definitely will be more than willing to help you start your week the right way on Breakfast Central. So do not forget, it starts from 7 a.m.
Yes, indeed. And, we wish you a wonderful weekend. The weekend is over, but then a wonderful week ahead, and then enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I remain Darshan Usman.
And my name is Chiwata Onyema. Enjoy the rest.